Okay, so looks like we're going here. So let's get the link.
Now, when I speak, does my name show up?
Your name doesn't, no, just your profile picture.
Okay.
Okay, so if you are watching this video at some point in the future, right now we had difficulties with our moderator not showing up. And so we are soft starting this bad boy. And so we're just kind of waiting for people to get in. We're posting this link around a bunch of different groups.
Okay.
And for people hopping in, there is a chat function. If you all want to talk shit to each other while we are doing our thing, you can do that.
Wait, can we view the chat?
I think somewhere on your screen, I think you can turn the chat on and off, I think.
Okay, I'm not. Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay. I just posted that in there for myself. Because I'm going to be copying the link and pasting it around to different places on my phone.
Okay.
And for those of you who are just joining us, we are getting this ball rolling here. Our moderator hasn't shown yet. We're going to keep trying to get a hold of him. So we're just going to kind of soft start this thing. So right now, we are just taking this watch link and posting it all over the place.
Can I go to that link, or will that
Oh
mess
no,
with?
you should be able to just go like, because I imagine you have this open on one window and Facebook open on another.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you go over to the Facebook link, you can copy the link and paste it around as well. So we'll probably give this another couple of minutes here of copying and pasting the link around. And then I guess we will get started and hopefully we hear from our moderator.
Yeah. Hopefully he jumps in at some point.
Yeah. If not, we'll figure it out. Or if any of you autismos out there want to offer up to moderate, you can do that.
Yeah, we just really need the moderator wouldn't have to do much. Just make sure we don't go off on any crazy tangents. Just kind of keep us on track if need be. But I think for the most part we can self moderate.
Yeah, yeah. So I just have to paste this link to a few more places. And we will be good. Okay.
All right,
So
I'll just paste it on my my news feed.
okay. Normally I can see how many people are watching, but I can't see that at the moment. Let me see here. I thought there was.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything.
Sorry, guys, just a few more minutes. We got totally derailed by our lack of a moderator. Okay, I'm pretty sure I pasted this anywhere and everywhere. So I guess we'll get started. So yeah, welcome to Barge Bloodsports, episode number 1, hopefully of many. I am Honk Honkler or Liam O'Connor, or I guess whatever you know me as in the group. I have a couple profiles in there. Honkler won't be back until about the 6th. He's in Facebook jail. And so then I've got Mr. Logan here, Logan
Logan Lord.
Lawrence.
That's
And
right.
so we're going to be doing individualism versus collectivism, and hopefully it's not too broad of a topic. Let's see. But I guess what we'll do is go take a couple of minutes each, maybe just to just kind of introduce ourselves and where our backgrounds are and stuff like that. So yeah, Logan, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, so I will be defending individualism, and basically, um, I guess the closest thing for me would be libertarian. I don't. I mean, libertarian's kind of a broad category. So I would say I'm for laissez-faire capitalism, limited government, that type of thing. Um, and so we're starting with individualism versus collectivism, but I think we're going to narrow it down eventually to um, probably to capitalism versus white nationalism. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, Honk, but um, yeah. So that's basically going to be my starting point. I don't know how much of our backgrounds we want to give, but
Totally up to you.
I mean
Yeah.
that's about it for now. I'm not a professional philosopher, or I don't have any credentials or anything like that. So I'm just a guy with an opinion.
For sure. Yeah. And I guess my background would be I started out um, mostly as like an anarchist leftist. I was pretty swept up by the Ron Paul campaign of 2012. I even voted for the guy. Went pretty hardcore libertarian there, but then after that campaign and what happened in '08, I just kind of realized the futility of conservatism and libertarianism in electoral politics. So I got pretty disenfranchised with that, or disillusioned by that, I should say. Went down the Murray Rothbard path, said fuck government altogether, stayed in that autistic little claptrap for probably the better part of a decade, probably 6 years, 7 years. And then, yeah, eventually saw what was happening in Europe, the migrant crisis, then just kind of, then I started looking into the race and IQ stuff. I felt really stupid for not knowing that information earlier because then the world started to make a whole hell of a lot more sense. Fast forward then a couple years, and now I'm pretty much a full blown autistic alt right shitlord. So that pretty much narrows that down. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess starting it out, and so let me see. We were relying on a moderator here. So, how about this? Referring back to my negative experience with the Ron Paul campaign in 2012, the of um, futility of conservatism and individualism in the electoral scope. I see it as lacking will to power. It lacks it lacks mojo. Um,
Right.
it doesn't seem to capture the hearts and minds.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't seem to resonate.
And so yeah, and so that was kind of an early thing I figured early on. I thought that only really applied to, and if you have a counter argument, let me know and you can go ahead and
I,
dissect this. But
I just wanted to ask you. Well, why don't we go ahead and define individualism, or say what you mean by individualism?
so when I mean individualism, I mean considering the individual as like completely sovereign.
Okay.
Um Collectivism being defined as so, society should be able to expect certain things from you. And what those things are is obviously way up for debate because like we said before we even started the stream, individualism versus collectivism is actually a bit of a false dichotomy, false dichotomy. It's actually more of a slider scale. It's actually more of a Venn diagram. And how close or far apart you want to move those links together is really what the debate is. Because if I'm not mistaken, you're not total hardcore anarcho-capitalist, right? Like you believe that the state has a role.
Right. Right.
So right there, we agree collectivism is necessary to some degree because that's a collective entity. And so I think going from that framework, I think would be the most constructive.
Okay, so neither one of us is complete and utter um, individualist or collectivist by those definitions, at least.
Right.
So I guess how much power should the collective have over the individual?
That's a pretty broad question. I guess the best way I could answer that is basically whatever the power to tax, I believe, is a valid one. But again, I don't necessarily agree that all taxation is legitimate. Like I oppose personal income taxes, for example. I think that should be reserved for large businesses. Um, Different things like that. Zoning laws, writing legislation, courts. You know what I mean? So it's really not that radically different from a paradigm we have now in that way. I mean, there's obviously a lot wrong with the paradigm we have now. I think we can both agree on that point. But yeah,
Okay,
I mean, so I view the state as an expression of of a nation, and so by nation I mean that in the literal sense, a genetic stock, a group of people.
okay, so I definitely want to get into that, but first, why should the collective have any power over the individual?
Because no one is truly individual. You do have to, in varying degrees, depending on the situation, you do rely on a society to survive. And so you need the society more than the society needs you, if that makes sense. So to participate in a society, certain things should be expected from you.
Okay, and certain thing. Okay, I agree to an extent because you need. Okay, so let me just go back to individualism versus collectivism. I see individualism, and I have a definition here somewhere, but it's the basic idea is that the individual owns his own life. You own your own life. I own my own life. Um, and collectivism is that the collective actually owns your life. So, or in this case, it would be society. Society owns your life, not you. And so the rights of the individual are kind of subservient to the good of the collective.
I would push back on that a little bit.
On that definition.
Because the only people who say that collectivism means society owns you as the individual, the only people that say that are individualists. You know what I mean? Um, that it's not that feels more like you're telling me, and not you, obviously, but like you just generally, like individualists, like your camp. It feels like you're telling us what we're thinking and not actually accurately representing. Does that make sense?
Okay, so that's exactly why I wanted to go back through the definition,
Right.
so we can get on the same page. So I'm not saying that the collective owns you outright, I guess, but I would see it as um, okay, the way most progressives see it, as in you have your rights, but every so often you have to sacrifice certain things for for the good of society or the good of the group, and that's been the justification for the welfare state, for things like social security, for um, all the welfare programs, for Medicare, Medicaid. It's you have to pay. You're forced to pay into those programs, whether you agree with them or not,
Yeah,
for the
and
good of society or
and
for
for
the
the
good of the elderly or whatever the group is.
and I would say, for the record, as a former libertarian, I 150% understand that you should be careful when advocating for government force on things. That is, just getting this out of the way early. That is not lost on me. I know using the government to do certain things can have certain unintended consequences. I did learn that as a libertarian. I don't completely eschew that idea, but
Right.
that I believe should just give more weight to how necessary these functions of the state are, if that makes sense.
Okay, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing I said a lot as an ANCAP, for example, where like if you have tariffs, tariffs ultimately, quote unquote, they have the unintended consequence of like being an indirect tax on the consumer. It raises prices. And minimum wage laws, they raise the price of labor without a corresponding demand and
Right, right.
or increase in demand, so it hurts workers, and some of that's
Yeah.
legit, some of that's bullshit. But you know what I'm trying to say. Like these
Yeah.
unintended consequences are not lost on me. So when I do say the state should do something, it's for at least know I
You're
know.
thinking of those. Yeah, you're cognizant of
Right,
those things.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, got it. And then I just wanted to ask you about I think you referenced it, um, that the collective should be based on, I guess, ethnicity or
Um, as far as like in the general, in the widest sense possible, states have always and states in the not in the American definition of state, but in the in just how it's always been. Government probably started as an outgrowth of religion, organized religion. It has since become secularized and is kind of morphed in its function. But yeah, I mean, but yeah, governments should represent a nation. In that, in a nation as a genetic stock. Do I think every nation on Earth should do that? No, because I don't know what's best for every nation on Earth. What I do know, and this might be cutting the bullshit straight to the chase here, is European people of European descent don't have that anywhere, and they don't seem to be allowed to have that anywhere. So what I advocate is somewhere there be an ethno state for Europeans,
okay. And why should there be an ethno state?
because every predominantly white country on the face of the earth right now is being pushed by super national entities, whether it's the UN, the EU, whatever it may be. They're being pushed into this multicultural um, paradigm, and none of them are allowed to. You know what I mean? None of them are allowed to assert themselves as a people. And so yeah, it should be allowed to happen at least in one place in the world. Like for example, like no one goes to Africa, right, and says that you need to let more Asians into your country. That that kind of shit is only directed at white people
Okay, no, I don't disagree with any of that, but I mean, why should there be what is the point of having societies based on race? I guess is what I'm getting at. Like why would it be good to have any ethno states, whether it's black, white, Asian? Um, why would race be the primary?
Race doesn't necessarily have to be a primary. It could be ethnicity. It could be a few other things. But I mean, generally speaking, so government has always been an expression, a collective expression of an identity of a people. Um, so it's the default mode. Does that make sense? So it's always been like that, and it's something that you're not going to be able to rationalize your way out of.
Okay, I don't think I agree with that. I mean, I agree that the government's it might be based on an identity, but the identity I don't see why the identity would have to be race rather than, say, Western values or Western culture.
Well, humans are innately ethnocentric. It's built into us, right? So like I said, with government, the source of government in general being a natural human expression of a group, um, humans always tend to groups. So and it's usually based on racial and ethnic identities. Like, humans are naturally nepotistic. Um, they tend to. Hey, what's up?
Hey, John.
Hey, we got our
Hey,
moderator back.
Yes.
back. It's
Or
I'm like half an hour early.
No, you're not. We started 20 minutes ago.
oh,
Yep,
you know what?
five
He's probably
five
on.
twenty.
Yeah, he's probably on a Central Time.
I tried to make sure it said Eastern Standard Time everywhere, but anyway, we're glad to have you, buddy. Um, so yeah, I guess let's go ahead, and now that we've got you here, and we probably have more people watching now than when we did that soft start. So, Logan, what do you think about just kind of resetting a little bit, or do you want me to, or do you want to continue going on this thought?
Oh no, we can reset.
Okay. It's up to you. I don't want to make it look like I'm trying to like get out of answering a question. You know what I
No,
mean?
no,
But
no, we'll
Although you
definitely
probably are.
fuck you.
no, we'll get back to that.
Yeah, we'll get back to it.
All right. Well, sorry about the miscommunication.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. Shit happens.
Anyway.
And actually, just real quick, one quick thing. I'm getting complaint that I'm very quiet, and so what I'm going to do is, as a moderator, while you are doing your thing there, I'm going to plug in a different microphone.
Fantastic.
Wait, where are you
All right, so
getting?
I don't have any idea what I missed out on. The only thing I would like to say, and I was messaging you guys the last couple minutes, and nobody was responding, and now I see why. Um, Having done this before in various formats over the phone, it is crucial to not talk over each other, not to interrupt, just because it comes across as jarbled mess. Nobody understands anything that's being said if you talk over somebody. So I won't interrupt anybody unless they're like reeling off course, and I don't really see that as an issue. So you guys seem pretty decent for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely just keep us on point. And I think we've been allowing each other to talk, so it's been that part's been going pretty well.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys, I don't know how you want to do it, but we
Well,
can just go ahead and just dive right back in.
yeah, I think we can. I think it might be good if each of us kind of now that we have a moderator, maybe like frame the debate again. I give my position, he gives his position, and we kind of
Yeah,
and
we can totally just start over, kind of jump right back. You guys will pick up where you left off. I don't have any idea, obviously, because I wasn't here. So, but yeah, what we'll do is I'll just kind of ask each of you a question just to kind of get you started on. Go ahead, Liam.
Oh, sorry. I was testing the mic I just plugged in. Anyway, continue.
All right. So what I'll do is I'll just ask each of you a question just to kind of lay out exactly what your point of view is on it. Try to keep it brief. I mean, don't keep it so brief that we don't understand what the fuck you're talking about, but get to the point. So I'll just ask each of you. We're going collectivism against individualism, I believe, right?
yes,
And Honk is collectivism,
Yes.
and Logan is individualism, right?
yes.
All right, excellent.
Check.
So,
Check.
are you ready over there, Honk? Are you good?
How is my audio coming through?
It sounds good to me, but
Loud and clear.
All right,
I
cool.
wasn't the one complaining, but I would definitely check your messages and make sure that whoever said something can hear you better.
Cool.
All
Will
right.
do.
So what we'll do is I'm just going to ask a question. I'll start with Honk here. So why don't you take a couple minutes, explain collectivism and how you think society will benefit from it or is better for it.
Yeah, sure. So collectivism is like we were talking about a few minutes ago, the sliding scale between individualism and collectivism. It's a false dichotomy, really. It's just a bunch of gray in between. As long as you agree there should be some kind of collective political entity in a society, then you're on some level a collectivist, even if it's a tiny bit. So the benefit of collectivism effectively is there being a government and a role that it plays in representing its its subjects, basically. Who those subjects are and what should be the definition of that is a whole different discussion, I think, that we'll get into later beyond the scope of this introduction. But yes, so yeah, collectivism is basically just if you're going to be part of society, you need society more than society needs you. And so if you're going to participate in society, there has to be some kind of expectation of you on some level.
Hmm. Understood. All right.
Okay.
Let's go. Let's go with Logan then. Same question, just individualism. So, what exactly is individualism, and how is that benefit to a society?
Okay. So basically, the way I see individualism is it's the idea that the individual owns his or her own life. So it doesn't belong. It doesn't belong to the group. It doesn't belong to the collective. It doesn't belong to the government, to the king, to any ruler. You own your own life, and you are the one who gets to decide how best to live your life. Now, it doesn't mean that. I mean, I think there is a place for government, and I don't necessarily see having a government as a form of collectivism, because you need a government or a state to enforce and protect individual rights. So I see that as a necessary part. Otherwise, I don't think individualism can thrive. So
Okay. All right.
yeah.
So, I do have a couple questions to follow up with that, and then I'm kind of let you guys go. Um, Honk, I wanted to ask you. You talk about collectivism very much like statism, and
Correct.
yeah. So, as I guess the best way to describe me would be a minarchist. But even with the most minimal of state, you're still a statist. So, what level of collectivism do you think is acceptable? And just kind of keep it brief. We can dive into that later. But just kind of curious, where are you
Yeah.
at on the level of statism or
Well,
collectivism?
sure. And so, I mean, ultimately, when it comes down to it, every kind of like what we were talking about a little bit ago, a government is an expression of a people. The laws in a society are an expression of that group. And so every group is going to have a different threshold of what is best for them. African governments are different than South American governments. They're different from Chinese or Asian governments, ad infinitum. So I don't have a way of answering that spans across universally. But what I can say is what I would like to see is a government that enforces a very strong border, that enforces protection for its workers, whether that be through mandatory sick leave or mandatory sick hours, I should say, some kind of minimum wage, that kind of thing. I'm pretty pro private sector union as far as that goes too. And a state should foster, and the government should foster that to some degree.
Right. Okay. And Logan, you kind of talked a little bit about um, giving into statism or collectivism to some extent because you admitted that some government is necessary. And you and I are on the same page on that. Um, but so I'm kind of curious. I need to understand exactly where, and again, you're arguing for individualism, and not necessarily
Right.
that it's your belief, but you're arguing for individualism. So where are you drawing the line on statism and how much government?
Well, okay. So just to clarify, I don't actually view government as a form of collectivism to me. So I just don't see it that way. But where I would draw the line is the only purpose of government is to protect individual rights. So to protect people from murder, theft, protect property rights, that kind of thing, fraud also, and enforce contracts, arbitrate disputes, that kind of thing. But it's I guess kind of like Milton Friedman said, the government is the referee. So they're not
Yes.
it's not they're not ruling over us. They're just making sure we're all playing by the rules.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the part where I'm going to kind of turn things over, and I'm going to ask one more question and kind of let you guys go. I'm going to bow out a little bit and just listen in and keep you guys. I'm going to be the referee, so to speak, as I'm sorry, as Logan Honk. Who just said that? Logan just said that. All right. So I'm going to be the referee. I'm just going to listen and let you guys roll. But my question is, you said you don't view government as collectivism.
I'm curious about that
You
too.
yeah, the two of you are kind of different on that, because collectivism is kind of statism, according to what Honk was saying, and then Logan, you kind of separated the two. And while I think that I understand what you're saying, I think it's kind of a pipe dream. I don't see that ever a feasible. I don't know. So explain to me, Logan, why collectivism is not a form of statism or a form of government in some way, or how it cannot be.
Okay, so if you have a government that we are the way the founders envisioned it, it's not really a democracy. What we have isn't really supposed to be a democracy per se. It's what do you call it? A constitutional republic. And so the collective isn't really relevant in that case because it can't. No, the collective can't vote to override your rights. The only thing we vote on is our elective representatives. Really, I mean, I guess certain bills and laws. I'm not really sure, but there's certain things that the collective has no say over, and that's a good thing because most people are really stupid, in my opinion. And
Well,
they'll vote.
I would agree.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't dispute that either. Most people are half the population's below average, right?
Right, and you don't want 51% of the people voting on what the other 49% are going to do, because that's basically serfdom or
Correct.
slavery.
Correct.
So yeah, I'm with you on that, and you gave me a little chubby when you mentioned constitutional republic, because not too many people know that. Everybody likes to spout off the word democracy a lot, and
yeah.
we are not a democratic nation.
Okay, so you kind of see where I'm coming from. I view if we were a democracy, then I would view that as collectivism because that's kind of like mob rule. That's like the majority gets to dictate what goes, and the minority really has no say. But
Right.
what we have are we actually have a set of rules, and you can't and the group cannot. I mean, the way it's supposed to work is the group can't override that. Sometimes it does, but in general, it's not supposed to. So.
And so in this representative system that we have, the people who are elected represent who?
Oh yeah, they represent their
Collective.
yes, they do.
So the state is collective.
Yes, I mean the state as it currently exists. Yes.
And I'm not a fan of democracy either. So just getting that out of the way.
Okay.
I do. I know I said I wasn't going to interrupt, so this is the last time. But what I'm catching from Logan is that he likes the way this experiment of America was intended, but not necessarily the way it's going.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so you're on board with a representative republic where we elect a representative, tell him what we want, our voices heard, whether it be at the local level, the state level, or the federal level, and they should carry that out.
Well, let's just say I don't have a problem with that aspect of it. You know, I,
I think we can all agree that it is not working out that way.
Hail
no,
to the gnaw.
so so that I'm not when I'm asking you if you're in favor of it, you're not in favor of what's going on now. I don't think any of us are, but you're in favor of a constitutional republic the way it was laid out in the Constitution.
yes.
Okay. All
Well,
right.
okay. Oh, I should say just a quick caveat on that because
That's fine.
I'm not for the white nationalist part of that.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that there's a part in the founding of America that we aren't exactly talking about. um,
Well, we
so
can talk about that.
we can first. I just want to. Well, actually, two things. Moderator, are we calling you by your name or just calling you moderator?
You can call me John. I don't
All
care.
right, all right,
Haney,
John.
Haney.
So
Most
I
people
have
call
a
me Haney. I don't.
I have a request from Larry in the group here. He wanted me
Oh
to call.
Jesus, I don't want to hear shit from Larry.
He wanted me to call you a faggot. So there you are.
Okay.
You're a faggot. And then on the other end, so Logan, you use the magic word. You use the magic R word. Rights. So let's do it. Where do rights come from? Give me your and before you go, I just wanted to just kind of clarify this here. So as the doubter, I kind of have a rhetorical advantage. You know, the burden of proof is not on the doubter. You know, so what I would want you to do if you think it's productive, I will not interrupt you. But if you want to start from the individual and go outwards as to what the source of rights are, then you can do that if you want.
Okay. So this is kind of getting into philosophy a little bit. I don't necessarily want to go too deep, but basic. I mean, the rights are just a concept. Basically, it's a moral concept. It just gives us, and I'm referring to individual rights as they were defined by John Locke, I believe, and it just gives us some restrictions and limitations. Maybe it's a way to think of it. Some guidelines on how on how humans can interact with other humans, right? So the the source you could say is it stems from our nature as humans.
So you're a moral objectivist, correct?
Yes, or a moral realist, I should say. Same thing, but
So where exactly do rights come from?
okay. So think of it this way. So let me just get into morality really quickly,
Sure.
right? Because you are what we call a moral relativist.
Maybe.
Which, well, it's a confusing term because, but anyway, it just means that you don't believe that there's an objective morality, right?
Correct.
It just it depends on the society or depends on the people. Some people have some people think I don't know, child sacrifice is wrong. Some think it's right. Who really
Right.
knows? It's all a matter of opinion.
That's exactly where, yeah, it from that perspective, objective moral truth claims just kind of sounds like religion for smart people.
Right, and that's why, and I no, I totally agree, and that's how I used to think, but moral, what you have to just the whole reason we care about morality is because we need a system of interacting with people that seems fair and that leads to like a universal set of standards so that we can interact with each other without screwing each other over, without killing each other. And so if you think of morality in those terms, if we just start with that, then there are objectively right and wrong answers, right? I mean, if if the point is so that we can coexist and get along and flourish, well then you don't want to have things like theft and fraud and murder. Those things would not lead to human flourishing, right? Are you with me?
I'm with you.
I'm with you as well. My only pushback on that is going to be that not all groups of people, not all societies have they don't put material wealth above all else. I'm actually one of those people as well, but I mean, you can take for example like kind of like what you mentioned, like, you know, there's like cannibals in Africa. I think you mentioned that a minute ago. There's like
Yep.
cannibals in Africa. Um Obviously eating other people is going to you know, materially subtract from your society. You're literally eating your human capital, and yet they still do it, right? So
Right. And
I don't know if the promotion of wealth is necessarily the standard we should, you know.
okay. Let me just clarify.
Can I
Okay,
interject for a second?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so you talked about morality, and you kind of touched on, you know, with cannibals in Africa and stuff like that. I think rights and morals are subjective to society. I mean, societies are different. Like in some Middle Eastern countries, you know, marrying a 9-year-old bride is completely acceptable, whereas over here it's completely frowned upon. So, you know, and I've seen it 1,000 times on Facebook when somebody posts something, where, you know, a guy marries his 9-year-old bride and whatnot, and people are all up in arms. I'm kind of like, we don't live there. We don't realize how common and normal that might be over there. So morals are subjective to society. Um, but I think what Honk was trying to get to is where the rights come from,
Right.
and not so much. You're kind of like leaning a little more towards the moral aspect of it, and I think he's trying to get to more to where the rights come from.
Yes, and I was getting to that. I just needed to
Okay.
I need to get objective morality out of the way,
Okay.
just so I can make the point about rights. But as far as what you're saying, I I would say those societies are wrong. They're objectively wrong. You know, marrying a 9-year-old is bad for human well-being. It's bad for human flourishing. Eating people, eating other humans is bad. Um, you know, child sacrifice, slavery, all these things that are still practiced in other countries that are all horrible. Yeah, those societies are all worse off for it, and they're we don't have a way of measuring it. I mean, really, we don't have the tools to measure it. But if we did, I would say that they're objectively, um, you know, suffering more and going through more misery, that kind of thing. Um,
And so one thing, because you know, as you and Haney and most of the people in this group that we're in on Facebook know, is I spent a long time in the moral objectivist camp. Um, so one argument that kind of rustled my jimmies a little bit when I was still in that mode, and it kind of began the unraveling that got me to, I guess, what you would call a moral relativist, is and I say this because this argument was used against me because I used to make the exact same arguments you're making. So you're saying objective morality and objective rights and stuff like that, but really it makes more sense to apply the word universal to that and not objective.
well,
Because it's a universal morality in the West not to fuck children, right? But it's not an objective morality because people do it all over the world, right? So it's like it's
well,
calling it objective is like it sounds like a projection of your moral values onto the rest of the world.
I got you. I got you. Okay, so let me just use a quick analogy because I think this will clarify it. Okay, so let's say eating vegetables is generally it's healthy, right?
Sure.
We consider it healthy, and let's say eating donuts is unhealthy, right?
Sure.
Okay, now let's say that there's a society somewhere else that thinks eating donuts is healthy and eating vegetables is unhealthy. Are they their opinion of what's healthy and what's unhealthy really has no bearing on whether it's actually healthy or not healthy.
But the health and or lack thereof of something you eat is measurable. It's physical. It's tangible.
But I would say flourishing is too. We just don't necessarily have the tools for measuring it per se. But I mean, it's kind of obvious. Like if you look at Islamic societies where the women are forced to wear the full burqas and have like very little rights and have battery acid thrown in their faces for trying to learn how to read. Those are definitely not flourishing societies. I mean, we can't quantify it because we don't have the tools to measure it, but you can obviously see it.
And so, question then: these Arabs you're talking about who live in these backwards societies that we are fundamentally incompatible with because of these different moral codes that we have. What? And this is independent of whether morality is objective or universal or relative or what. Just so, do you think that everyone on Earth has a right to go anywhere they want on Earth, and it's their right to do so? Their travel has no right to be impeded, so long as they're not stepping through private property.
No, I don't.
Okay, okay, because there's a surprising amount of libertarian types that will say what you're saying, and then also say that these Arabs they just called backwards that fuck kids and put their wives in burqas now have the right to open borders, come here, and they don't see a problem with that.
No.
Because that is one of the functions earlier that I mentioned. That is a collectivist function of the state to put a firewall of a border around it.
Okay, yeah, we're totally gonna agree there.
Yeah.
No, wait. Can I ask you though? So why did you want to get to individual rights, or where they come from?
Because
Okay.
it
Yeah.
is my least favorite conversation to have in the entire world. It's tedious, it's annoying, it's very semantic, it's very pedantic, and I just wanted to get it out of the way early, honestly.
Okay. So let's put that aside for now. And I mean, I think we kind of got.
We have a feel for where each other is at.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate point, and where I think moral relativism, if we want to call it that, because I mean, like I said, I stopped once I left the moral objectivist camp. I just kind of stopped caring about what the label was for that. You know what I mean? So, I mean, if I'm a moral relativist, then whatever, I own it. And so, if we want to call it that, then what that necessarily leads to is the state, um, the state and society, generally speaking, should be left to be more ad hoc when it comes to solutions on things, and not be overly tied down and constrained by these abstract objectivist principles or these abstract moral principles.
I mean, I would agree. But can we agree that morality is about human flourishing? Would you not agree with that?
You have to define flourishing.
Well-being, happiness, um, psychological, and you know, physical. I mean, well-being is the best term I could use to capture all that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where I mean, I think we can find common ground in here to the extent to where, like, I do believe the state has a duty to tend over the happiness and flourishing of its people. I think where we maybe diverge is whether or not that happiness and flourishing is something that's flourishing is objective or not. Um, and
Okay, so
so
let's put that aside.
yeah. And so yeah, I mean, I think we pretty much squared that away.
Okay. So we're gonna agree then that whether it's objective or subjective, the whole purpose of a moral system is to lead to greater well-being, right? Away
Right.
from harm, away from suffering, and toward flourishing, well-being, thriving, whatever you want to call it.
I gotcha. I gotcha.
Okay.
All right, Haney, what's next?
I'm just listening. I'm letting you guys go.
I think
Really, you guys are You guys are on a roll. You guys are asking each other questions. Everything's rolling smooth. I don't really see any reason for interjection right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think where we're at is we both don't want to get hyper autistic into the objective versus subjective rights, but now we don't really have a good segue
Well, I
into
actually
something
do.
else.
I do. But
Okay, yeah, go for it.
but John, feel free to jump in if you do have a question.
I will. Oh, the only thing I have to say is you talked about a society that preferred donuts over vegetables, and I'd like to know where that is. Other than that, you guys run free.
I think that's the United States.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I'm here.
So I wanted to I wanted to get back into white nationalism and white identitarianism,
Sure.
right? Okay, so because if we're both agreeing that the whole point really is, a society where people are thriving and flourishing.
We're
And
already halfway in agreement then.
yes, yeah. Again, because I don't see that it has to be. I don't see an ethno state as necessary or even conducive to that. Because what you really want, and this is from my perspective, is you want people who are rational, who are who have the same values as you, and hopefully, provided that you have good values. But yeah, people with, I guess how Martin Luther King said it,
Oh God.
the content of their character rather than the color of their skin or whatever. Like I would see that as, because you could have a society of white people that you you totally don't agree with you. They could be communists or um, you know
Well, the Bolshevik Revolution, just throwing this out there, the Bolshevik Revolution wasn't a white person thing. let's let's call them. You can't say it anymore on YouTube, but they're bi-coastal elites. Let's call them an international clique, if you will. They wear funny hats, funny little hats.
Okay, I think we know who you're referring to.
Yeah. So anyway, but
Are the hats white?
sometimes.
So anyway,
they got little stars on them. They're pretty neat.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I mean, what you and here's I guess where my point is to go back to answer your question of why does it have to be an ethno state, right? So and I'm going to use an argument you made, not as a gotcha, but to tie it back and so it has impact, right?
Okay.
So you referred to Arab societies just a couple of minutes ago as backwards, and I don't know if you used the word backwards, but you shed a negative connotation on it.
Primitive, backwards.
Yeah. So the reason it has to be an ethno state is so those people don't come over and become a majority and turn it into that. Right? Dearborn, Michigan. I know it's like people call it like a boomer conspiracy theory, and it is kind of cringe when boomers bring it up. But that doesn't mean it's not true, and that doesn't mean that there aren't areas in Dearborn, Michigan where cops just won't go. There are areas in London the cops just won't go because it's over 50% Arab now. Paris is no longer Paris. So you have to draw some kind of line on who gets in. So the line I suggest we draw is the line that's been all over the world for the past 10,000 years up until the last maybe 60 years, and that's by race or ethnicity.
Okay, but you are acknowledging that doesn't have to be the line. I mean, you could keep you could keep those people out without having an ethno state. Correct.
Theoretically, you could, but what if you're so why be multicultural if you're gonna pick some groups and others to discriminate against?
Doesn't sound very multicultural.
Exactly.
Excluding certain cultures.
Yeah, it seems like a little bit of
Just want to throw that out there as Captain Obvious.
So if you're gonna advocate for a multicultural society, why keep out the Arabs, right? Because you would say the same thing about Africans, right? I mean, they don't put their women in burqas necessarily, but it's definitely like, to borrow a leftist word, I mean, you can pick 90% of the societies in Africa and you can call that a rape culture.
Yeah.
So you don't want that here either. So that takes it out.
Well,
And-
I would agree, but it's well, first of all, with the Muslims, it's not based on race or ethnicity. That's just it's Islam. Islam.
Well, Islam and Judaism both have a common thread where it's a religion based upon the supremacy of a people.
Right, but a religion's just a set of ideas, and that religion just happens to be a set of really, really bad ideas. And so people that are committed to those ideas, you don't want to let in because generally they're Islamists or jihadists, and we don't let in terrorists. But that doesn't mean like I don't see the point. I mean, what about Arab atheists? I mean, I, I think they would be fine. Um, the thing you want to keep out are bad ideas and bad ideologies. That's the way I see it. Like I wouldn't
So,
want
any, so
to.
Like
anybody who's religious.
Well,
aha, good one.
I mean, I'm not.
That was a
So,
good one.
So just, and I'm not sure that Logan is aware of this, but I'm an agnostic atheist.
okay.
That is the correct version of atheism.
Right. So I'm open to the idea, but I'm not seeing anything, and I don't believe there is one until you show me. So, but what I do see as a person who lives in 2019 is most religions, and not all, and I'm not condemning anybody who believes or nothing like that, but most religions seem to be the root and cause of a lot of issues in every country, not just ours. There's countries at war in the Middle East right now, and their sole purpose is religion, their God, and what they believe. And you believe different, so we have to kill you.
Right.
So so when you're saying we want to keep out bad ideas and stuff like that, just you have any religious beliefs? Yes, you get the fuck out.
Well, I mean, and I'll supplement.
I'm not advocating for this. I'm just saying that's kind of what I'm hearing.
Devil's advocate kind of thing. Yeah, but what and I'll supplement what I said earlier. So okay, so your counter argument is that it's not Arabs, it's Islam. But aren't Arab Christians killing each other? Aren't Arab Hindus killing each other?
Not anywhere.
Doesn't the Arab world have the bloodiest borders in the entire world?
But that's Islam. I mean, the Christians might be committing some violence there, but it's nowhere near the same level. And it's not just Muslims in the Middle East; it's Muslims pretty much everywhere engaging in, the same behavior.
Well, Muslims from anywhere have migrated there over the past a Muslim that's not in the Middle East has arrived wherever they are in the past maybe 10 years. This is a very recent phenomenon.
Now, there's white guys from the U.S. that go over and join ISIS. There are people from dozens of different countries that get radicalized, by reading the books.
And white guys that get radicalized into shit. I mean, that's kind of, and I see that. I don't see that as an Islamic thing as well, because you have white atheists, you have white insert religion here in America that are flying off the handle right now, shooting up schools and stuff like that. I mean, I think white America has a cultural sickness, and we can maybe get into that a little bit, later. But no, I see that as a race and ethnicity problem. Whenever you have these huge global terrorist events like movies and media and video games, me as a millennial growing up, it was always like Russians. It was always like people, it was always white guys in tuxedos who were the terrorists. And now you actually look and it's all Arabs.
Well, I would just implore you to look at the numbers, because that really gives the story.
It really does, but I don't know if it does in the way that you're implying.
I mean, okay, there's no other ideology that's producing anywhere near the same level of violence and terrorism, and the violence and terrorism is totally in line with their scripture. I mean, they're all they're doing is quoting the Quran or the Prophet Muhammad. And I mean, let me just put it this way: if Islam is correct, if it's the word of God, then ISIS is totally right. Whatever they're doing is completely correct.
Well, I would.
Hold on. Okay, so a friend of mine and I did a podcast for a while, and we had on a guy by the name of we'll just call him Ty. I don't want to bring him into much into this. He is an advocate for Islam, and he's a former Marine, U.S. Marine. So they call him the Muslim Marine. You can Google that. That's fine. He's he battled all of this. Like him and I had a discussion on a podcast, and I kept throwing things at him, and he explained to me that that's not really in the Quran. Here's the problem with
some of
the
it's
religion.
hadiths, but go ahead.
Here's the problem with Islam and the Quran is it opens itself up to prophets. Okay, so and prophet can come along and say I talked to, and if he gets enough followers, then he gets a sect, and then that becomes so that whole 72 virgins thing. Just so you know, that is not at all anywhere in the Quran anywhere.
That's promised by imams trying to radicalize people.
Right. It's from a prophet who came along later. So the Quran doesn't teach this stuff, but there are people who came along afterwards and bastardized it, and you know, and they've tainted it. You know what I mean? So and that is an inherent issue with the religion of Islam is they allow prophets. So I could actually come forth and say I'm a prophet of Islam. I speak to Allah, and Allah told me this, and if I get enough idiots to believe me and start following me, we create, you know, a sect, like a different, like, and we can become, and I can say, you know, Allah told me that if we kill all infidels, we'll get 72 virgins.
There's one very obvious reason though, Haney, that would not take off in the greater Islam world, and that is because of your genetic heritage.
But I'm just saying hypothetically.
Right. I know. I'm just kind of bringing it back because where me and where me and Logan were kind of hovering around was the demographic versus culture versus religion kind of thing. But again, like Islam is an inherently Arab thing because there are no white people named Muhammad, right? But Muhammad's the prophet. There's an inherently genetic core to the belief system. Like, so I wanted to use another example too. So Christians in the Western world, the Bible's full of all kinds of violent shit that's probably on par with the Quran, but you don't see white European Christians going off and blowing shit up and having the bloodiest borders the world has ever seen. You don't see any of that, right? So again, saying it's just the ideology or just the religion and has nothing to do with the demographics that we're talking about, the actual ethnicities and races, it just doesn't compute, right?
Okay. So, but so Islam is created so long ago and in the Middle East that of course most Muslims are Middle Eastern,
right?
Or of Middle Eastern descent.
It's not.
I wouldn't say the people have created the religion. The religion is just that's their people. That's where it was originated from. Exactly. There's white, there's black, there's Hispanic, there's all kinds of people who are of Islamic faith.
Yeah, in Africa, it's pretty big too. So.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not. I really think it is the religion. I don't think it's the people, and I think you're kind of focused on like Arabs or whatever.
Sorry. This is just an example. So I mean, we're kind of getting caught up in it. But I just have to address what you said about Christianity really quickly.
Sure.
Because it's a totally different religion. And you're right, the Old Testament has like a lot of bad stuff in there, but then there's a New Testament, and then there's Jesus, and he's basically a pacifist, and you know the Old Testament, the New Testament kind of softens the Old Testament, and so Christians have a way to ignore all the horrible stuff from the Old Testament. That's not really the case with Islam, as you get further into the Quran, it gets more violent and more crazy. And they have and I'm not an expert or anything, but this is just from what I've researched. They have a doctrine of abrogation where the later more violent verses kind of supersede the earlier more peaceful verses, and that's why this one religion is just producing so much more violence. I mean, I wouldn't say I also wouldn't say that that's the only thing. There's other factors too, but
Well, there are a lot of factors. I mean, like harkening back to what I said a minute ago too. I mean, because Islam is unique as well in the fact that it's not just a religion; it's a political ideology, it's a social prescription, it's an all encompassing worldview, right?
right.
And as that was mentioned a minute ago, it's not a Islam was rooted in the Middle East. It's rooted from the Arab world, and talking earlier about how groups tend to express themselves in certain ways. Islam is an expression. You have some Arab Christians and Arab whatever, and you have some non-Arab Muslims, but ultimately, Islam is an expression of collective Arab identity because it came from that. It's because it's not just a religion. It's also a political ideology. It's also like everything else. It's a way of being, right? So
Yeah.
and so, harkening back to the original, so steering it back into the collectivism versus individualism thing. So I just the state should be an expression, just Islam does it, but then other groups, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, so yeah.
But I think
I just want to interrupt for a second. A few minutes ago, Honk, you had said that you don't see the Christian nations, bloody borders, blah blah blah. While I agree with that, today you don't see so much of that, but as history would kind of show us, Christians have been pretty violent. I mean, I'm not just. There's still the Spanish Inquisition out there, but there's all kinds of shit that went on that Christians did.
Totally.
Prior to our lifetimes or even our grandparents' lifetimes, Christians were they were basically the Muslims of today.
I hear that, and I don't disagree with you either. I think because and I think this is where Westernism has this is where I think Westerns, and I think we'll all agree on this point, generally speaking, but I think Western civilization has progressed to the level that it did is because it evolved, it ethically evolved and socially evolved faster than the rest of the world did.
Yeah, it did. But
so,
okay, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I mean I was pretty much done.
Well, I was just going to say I don't see an ethnic component to that. I mean, okay, so you could argue that white people created Western culture and Western values, and I wouldn't disagree with that, but it's not based on the race, and it has no. You don't have to be white to embrace Western culture and Western values, and all the things that make our society great.
If we're talking in terms of individuals, yes, you're right. From individual to individual, you don't have to necessarily be a white person to be sold Western values and why they're superior. What the problem comes is if you take 10,000 Somalians and put them in a city in Minnesota, the city in Minnesota becomes Somalia. It does not. It no longer will become. It is no longer Western, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So again, groups express themselves and it's a weird thing to wrap your head around as an individualist. Trust me, I had the same problem, but there is such thing as a collective identity and a collective consciousness, and people do express through their culture, their history, things like that.
Well, again, Somalia, I would just say just more bad. It's what I think it is ideologies. If you get people with bad ideas and bad ideologies, then you're just going to have bad societies. And again, there's plenty of white cultures that had shitty societies. I mean,
Right. Well, past tense is the key there, right? So Western and white Western societies socially evolved faster than the rest of them.
that
And even in the case of Arabs and Islam, they went backwards, right?
right.
Because weren't the Muslims the ones who invented algebra? Isn't algebra an Islamic word?
Yeah, yeah.
I
So
don't know that they necessarily went backwards or they just stopped moving.
It's stagnated.
And it feels like they went backwards. I don't think they necessarily went backwards. I just don't think they evolved at
okay,
the same
that's
pace.
fair. That's fair. I'm not an expert on Islam. I could have even butchered a lot of history of Islam for the past little while. I'm just giving it to you like I see it. Like
Right.
I could be wrong on a few details of history, but what I'm saying is that if you take whether they're Arabs or not, if they're African Muslims, it doesn't really matter. It's the fact that they're not white. I mean, if you take a 10,000 of them and plop them in a white city, it's going to change the city. Versus if you take 10,000 Germans, and Germans are way more socialist than we are, right? If you take 10,000 Germans who come from a different culture, who have a different ideology, as you said, plop them in a city in Minnesota, it's still a Western society in 10 years.
But,
you know what I mean? So
Germans are not socialists.
Relative to us, they are. I mean, they're very, they and
I would say no, but
relative to where we're at, I mean, they have their way. They are, economically speaking, they're far more to the left than we are.
Okay, I mean, they are more progressive, but it's not.
They're not Marxists. You know what I mean? They're not socialist in that sense, but I mean socialist as in like the way socialism is commonly talked about in the West is you have a market economy with public options in it, and public safety nets in it.
Right.
And so when I say I'm for a nationalistic socialism, that's what I mean. I'm not meaning Marxism. I'm meaning markets are superior. Yes, capitalists have won that argument, but you got to rein it in.
But wouldn't you agree, though? Wouldn't you agree that an ideal society for you would be people that, putting the racial stuff aside, that just have the same values and the same culture as you, right? So you would want people who I don't know, people who are smart, people who are hardworking, people who value like whatever you value, I guess, living together peacefully and coexisting. Wouldn't that be because, like I said, you could have a society of white people that are all just crazy leftists, and that would it would be an ethno state, but it would suck.
So what I'm hearing then is, so basically what you're saying right now is the same thing that leftists were saying in 1965 when the 1965 Immigration Act was passed. Are you familiar with that act in the U.S.?
I am familiar with it, but I'm not saying exactly.
So that's the argument that was being made then, and now 65 years later, we're a multicultural global homo hellhole, right? So like this is what leads from that.
A what?
It's
right.
Globo.
I heard you.
Globo homo.
Globo homo gayplex.
God damn.
But no, but that's what it is, right? And so, and this is where that path has already led us to.
Okay, wait. Because there's a big difference. There's one important difference, or a couple at least. There's other bad ideas that led to where we are now. I mean, multiculturalism. I'm against it. I think that's a bad ideology. Diversity is a strength. Another bad ideology.
Okay, so we agree there.
Importing poor people from all over the world, bad idea. These are just more bad ideas. All I'm saying is that not to restrict people on the basis of race. If we had just stopped there, and
but
okay.
If you want a reliable indicator on whether someone is going to be open and responsive to Western ideas, if you're only allowed to have one, just as a thought experiment, if you're only allowed to have one criteria, it's going to be race. That's going to be the most reliable way. right? Because you look at South America, it's very authoritarian, very autocratic. You have Africa, which is just total shit show. The Middle East isn't far off. The Asians behave a lot more like the South Americans and the Hispanics as far as how their politics play out. They're just a bit further left and more towards the Maoist way of doing things. And so if you only had one criteria to choose from, you would pick race. It's only logical.
Oh, okay. As far as people that are going to embrace Western
Yeah,
clothes.
right.
Okay, I don't. I would have to think.
And so multiracialism necessarily becomes multiculturalism.
Well, okay. My issue with multiculturalism is the idea that all cultures are worthy of respect and equally beautiful and all that. That's what I think is bad, because I think it undermines Western culture.
Well, rainbows are pretty because all the colors are separate, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I see happening.
Just for a minute, we're talking about multiculturalism. I think we're kind of all in agreement a little bit here that okay, so we're not trying to keep anybody down, and we're not trying to keep anybody out. We're not trying to. This is not fuck whitey or whatever. I don't. So we talked about the Civil Rights Act of 1965 that made everybody on a level playing field.
The
fine.
Civil Rights Act was 1964. The 1965 Act is the Hart-Celler Act. That was the act that made U.S. immigration policy go from white European immigrants only to the whole world.
Right. So.
Right.
But here's the thing. So I don't think there's a problem with opening the doors to some extent, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm more interested in why the need to push everybody upon each other, like every culture is doing it. Every culture, like even like you talked about the gays. I mean, that's being forced upon people who aren't interested in having it forced upon them.
And I think that's malicious, by the way, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah, that's fine.
I would agree.
Feminism and the NAACP and everybody. I don't care what it is. Every single group, whether it's race, religion, I don't give a shit, is being forced upon somebody by somebody. It's all this like they're trying to force this melting pot.
Right.
And
that's what I was referring to.
And we didn't vote for this.
And that's kind of what I wanted to expand on. Is Logan had kind of had touched on this. I as far as that part of multiculturalism, that doesn't work. We can exist in a society together, absolutely, positively, 100%. The gays, the Muslims, the blacks, the whites, the whatever you want to name. I don't care what, with the exception of Jews, of course. But everybody else, you can put us all in an area, and everybody is fine. But if you put us all in a room, we're all going to segregate to our little cliques.
Right. People do that. Go to a public school lunchroom.
Absolutely, positively natural and normal. So let them separate. Let them. I mean, do their own. I'm not saying separate water fountains and separate areas on the bus and shit. I don't want to regress back to bullshit.
No, I think.
But in general, let everybody just be where they want to be. Leave them the fuck alone and stop trying to push each other on each other.
And you don't.
You don't. And that's where a big problem is, and that's I think where this kind of comes down to that nitty gritty, right? Because, I think America is best being restored back to that 85%, 90% plus white demographic measurement that we had, because again, it's less conflict. And so do I think America should be 100% white society? No, that's stupid. That's never been achieved ever. And quite frankly, if I'm being honest, America is a white and black dichotomy of a country. Like, whites and blacks here have a very complicated history, and we should figure it out. I don't think blacks should go back to Africa. That's cruel. That's dumb. So we have a shared experience here.
Especially since most of them did not ever come from there.
That too.
Right.
But so getting that out of the way. So if you advocate for multiracialism, but not multiculturalism, Logan, I kind of have to ask them because in your ideal society where it's multiracial, what through what kind of, especially if you're like a small government type, what kind of mechanism does that society have to express itself through in a collective manner? Because a society like is it going to be based on capitalism and markets and buying stuff? Like, is that the soul of the country that you're looking to? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. Here's how I see it, and maybe this will appeal to you, maybe not. But my ideal society would be a completely free society, complete and utter laissez-faire capitalism, no welfare state. The only thing the government does, so no public education, no you know no government involved in housing or banking or finance or any of that. Just complete separation of state from private business.
Oh boy.
Um, and being a former libertarian, you're probably familiar with these ideas, but
Yeah.
yeah. And so all the government does basically is catch criminals, enforce, stop, catch murderers and thieves and fraudsters, and national defense, obviously.
Okay, I gotta raise my hand here.
Oh, okay.
What do they do about the companies that I don't know, provide unsafe work conditions or serve let's say it's a banana factory and they make bananas there. They sell tainted bananas.
If
Is that a function of
Well,
government, or
if you
is that the people get to decide that those bananas are bad and we just won't buy them no more?
well if the company you work for wants you to work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week for food coupons that you then trade into the company to, have a bed to sleep in and food to eat, that's just the market, Haney. That's just the market. It's what the market wants.
I'm trying to get. I'm definitely trying to get in Logan's ear on this one.
well, okay. I mean, these
Because
are.
I want to, like I said, so the factory that makes bananas, the banana factory, is selling tainted bananas. Whose job is it to stop the tainted bananas?
Whoever's selling them. I mean, okay. Here's the thing. You don't need separate business regulations above the laws that apply to all individuals, right? So if you have a law that says you can't poison people, let's say, and whoever poisons someone else goes to jail, then that's all the incentive you need not to sell tainted bananas or whatever. And also the fact that it's probably bad for business to poison your customers. But there's market incentives, there's private sector solutions to that,
Well,
and there's still the law that comes in when you actually do cause harm. So.
Well, I mean, the idea, like, once a business is past a certain size and scope and influence, the whole idea of hurting consumers or offending consumers or doing things consumers don't like makes you subjected to a boycott and it's bad for business. I kind of think like after a certain point, that's bullshit, right? So, for example, this recent Gillette ad, right? Or the two recent Gillette ads. One of them attacked straight white people. The other one is this.
Yeah, I stopped buying Gillette.
And that is not going to hurt them at all whatsoever. They don't miss your business.
Chick-fil-A was all the rage when the CEO of the company donated to some religious organization that was against gay marriage.
Right. So big capital is not this amorphous, apolitical, unideological blob. Big capital has an agenda, right? Because they know after they get to a certain size, no matter what they say, they can impose a cultural will onto a society, and it's going to stick. That's what we're seeing right now. This is why I called it Globo Homo Gayplex earlier, because they're pushing the gay and tranny shit on us. No matter how unpopular it is, no matter how many people boycott, they're still going to do it, and it's slowly sticking on. We've got kids twerking in strip clubs now.
Okay, can we come back to this? I just want to just finish laying out my ideal society, and then
sure, because I feel like my question wasn't exactly being answered. I'll give you a little more time, but then I'll re-ask it if I have to.
Okay. So anyway, yeah, laissez-faire capitalism with all that, and also complete and utter freedom of association. that means you can integrate or segregate as you please. We'll definitely have secure borders, so we Muslims and Africans can't just pour in by the million. That's going to be regulated and controlled by the government. But yeah, and that way, if you want a white ethno state or a white area, you are free to get together with your people and buy a plot of land and kind of create that for yourselves.
But you understand in that case that the mini white ethno state in that area is going to be going back to this phrase I'm using, it's going to express itself differently than the rest of society. It's going to start wanting different laws and different, the collective will of that little mini white ethno state is going to want to express itself, and so it's going to create tension. And so,
well, I mean, that's fine. I mean, people are going to have to deal with tension. Not everyone.
And so I'll go back and re-ask it because I don't feel like it's being danced around. It didn't actually get answered. So what in this I shouldn't say multicultural. I'm sorry. I'm used to saying multicultural. I mean multiracial. So if I ever say multicultural to describe you, I mean multiracial. I apologize in advance. But so in this multiracial society, capitalist free market society that you advocate for,
right?
What is the soul of what is everyone supposed to be rallying around? Consumerism and markets,
individual rights,
and buying stuff like it, because we have a society right now that's multiracial and just clamors around buying stuff, and you know what I'm trying to say. And then you've got mass shootings, you've got this cultural sickness among young white men, and it's terrible. It benefits everyone coming here, but the people who live here are left behind by that. They don't have representation anymore, and so it's making people nuts. And so I feel like even though it's not as laissez-faire as you would like on the social level, on the cultural level, we already have what you want, and it's not working out.
All right, so Honk, just one simple question because you said it wasn't being answered. Ask your question, and then Logan can answer it.
What can a multiracial society in a laissez-faire capitalist economic paradigm actually rally around to unite them so that they get along and function as a cohesive unit?
Okay, and just very quickly before I answer that, I'm not advocating necessarily
killing me
multiracial society. I mean, I'm not saying that it has to be multiracial. I'm not saying multiracialism is a good thing necessarily. I'm saying that it should be irrelevant almost. So just to get that out of the way. But what they're supposed to be rallying around, I would say, is individual rights and freedom. I mean, if you embrace those things, then
all right, I gotta interject here.
Most of the social issues just go away, I feel. But
I have to interject here.
Okay.
I think the answer Honk is looking for from you, Logan, is all right, let's just address
it's hard to
elephant.
articulate.
Can we address the elephant in the room? Logan, I feel like, I mean, not Logan, I'm sorry, Honk, I feel like you're trying to get us to white nationalism and discuss it a little bit. I feel like that seems to be, and not that it's right or wrong, but I feel like that's where you're kind of pointing at continuously is race. So can we just discuss that?
If that's, I thought we already kind of were in a
sort of, but not like, I feel like we're really just dancing around the topic. Let's just fucking discuss it.
Sure. So, so the as far as like the synthesis in the economic and social ideology that I have, it gets a bad rap because of what happened in Europe in the 30s. But you can, the only other, Elizabeth Warren calls it, what does she call it? Patriotic socialism, which is kind of, you could tell a focus group came up with that name because it's really national socialism, right? Nationalist social, attitudes uniting around a common theme in the society with a more socialist bent to the actual economics of it all. So what these countries in Europe had to rally around was their shared history, their shared culture, their shared heritage. And what resulted were some of the only economies in Europe that were growing during that time. So those societies had maximum flourishing. Those societies had maximum well-being for the people. I mean,
Okay.
you have to remember, no matter what your opinion of Hitler is, he was elected democratically.
Which societies were flourishing?
Germany and Italy, until they started losing the war. Then obviously that changed. But of all the other countries in Europe, you know, the war was very devastating for the entire continent, even for countries that weren't involved, because they kind of had to pick sides as far as trade goes. There was really no such thing as a truly neutral country, except for maybe a couple.
Switzerland.
Right. Switzerland. Well, it was either Switzerland or Sweden. I forget which one, but
Yeah, I forget too.
yeah.
I
But
think both of them actually. But
but then again, that racial homogeneity is how societies have always been built. And so this is how nations have always come up and become powerful and have thrived and survived, with however they want to run their societies. And so this kind of multicultural free market capitalism thing is very recent, but ever since it became a thing in the United States in the 60s, we've just gone straight down the shitter. So because people don't have something in common to rally around. You got to have something in common, otherwise it's not a country.
Okay, I see your point, right? So just to clarify, you're saying that without a shared ethnicity and kind of a
Heritage,
without a shared heritage, it's difficult for people to come together and rally around a common, I guess, ideology or ideal, maybe a common ideal.
Right. And so it seems like the end result of what you're advocating for is everyone just rallying around consumerism and markets and capitalism. And that feels so, I know this isn't very academic, but that just feels so empty and cheap.
Well, okay, so I would agree that consumerism is empty and cheap, and that's definitely a problem. But they could rally around an ideology. I mean, I don't know, like Western values. I mean, I don't see. You're okay. You're saying that's unrealistic. Is that what it is? Like just people with all these different racial backgrounds, and
it's gonna fall up. It's gonna fall apart and balkanize.
Okay.
You know, the most a joke that illustrates this point is if you ask someone what the most what the wealthiest Mexican country is in the world, or Hispanic country is in the world, the correct answer is California. You know what I mean? So like,
that's funny.
it's a funny joke, but where's the lie?
Well, okay, it just seems to me like you're misreading the.
Well, hold on a second. Okay, but let's say that California is the richest Hispanic country in the world. That kind of goes against what you were saying earlier, Honk, about when a certain group culture moves into, they bring it down to what they're used to. So if all the Mexicans came from Mexico and moved into California, then wouldn't California turn into shitty-ass Mexico?
Eventually, California is going to become that way, but it's only been a couple of decades. We can all agree California is on the ride down. It's past its peak, right?
Yes, but that's not because of multiculturalism. That's because of statism.
I would say it has more to do with government than Mexicans.
Well, I would agree with you. I would agree with you.
Ruling California, brother.
I would agree with you that it's government insofar as that choosing not to enforce your border is a government policy. That is an intentional, conscious government activity.
California is the most regulated, most highest tax. I mean,
by far.
Yeah, it's clearly.
Hey, and they're only barely just ahead of Illinois.
Yeah, Illinois is another one, but again, like you're seeing this like demographic diversity in common with all of these places that are these states that are slowly becoming third world countries.
I don't know. I mean, what about a state like Alabama?
What about it?
Go ahead.
I was going to say,
I mean, it's just I don't know the economics of it, but it's definitely like the lowest in education, and I mean it's not you know it's not a paradise of
well,
Intelligence
well,
or any
or industry or
I
yeah.
education.
I wasn't going to bring up intelligence. Okay, I wasn't going to bring that up, but since it was brought up before I brought it up, I mean, implying that Alabama is this white ethno state, right? It also has another population group
Oh,
that
it's not
is
white.
absolutely not. And
Well,
so,
I wouldn't say it's a white ethno state, but it's not overrun with like it's not a state that you would think of that's overrun with
That
immigrants.
state is largely black and white.
right.
Yeah,
So when people, especially not saying you guys are doing that, but just as an aside, like when leftists point to southern states and say, look how dumb these conservative states are and how low their IQs are. It's like, well, you know, if you factored out a certain population in the
I would
South, it actually IQ kind of goes up another 15, 20 points.
See, there we go. We're trying to touch on that race shit again.
A little bit. I mean, that's ultimately what me and
But
Logan's disagreement is. You know what I mean? So where the when we knew it even beforehand, when we were prepping for this show before we started
yeah.
going live, we already knew it was going to go here.
I mean, it has to go here because
It has to.
well, that I keep trying to get it there. Might as well go.
Right.
okay. So
Who's
I think
first?
Logan or
Go ahead.
okay
Go ahead,
okay
Logan.
okay because I can agree with you on all the race realism stuff. I think it's pretty obvious that the races are different, different IQs, different dispositions, different in a lot of ways, right? And I also agree with you that people are naturally ethnocentric. I mean, that's pretty clear if you just look at the way people naturally self-segregate, as you were referring to earlier. But that that stuff, I think, is it's it's worth overcoming. I feel like it's worth overcoming because
So then my follow-up question to you then is why does the United States have to be this petri dish? Why do you have to, what you're advocating, why does that have to be imposed on me or anyone else? 'Cause no one's voting for any of this. This is all happening extra legally. This is all happening extra constitutionally, extra electorally, right? These are decisions that come not from people. The white Americans in 1965 would not have voted to hand their country over to and open their borders to third world migration. To think they would is just kind of silly.
okay, and this is why I'm against democracy. I think in this case the unwashed masses are going to be wrong. You know.
Well, the state still has to represent the interests of the people, even if the people don't directly vote on it. And so in 1965, America wouldn't have voted for that. America didn't want that.
I don't think it should be up to a vote. I mean, I think, like I said, the only thing the government should be worried about are people's rights being violated. If not, you know, have at it. You know, like.
I'm trying not to screech when you say the word rights.
But that's how I would justify it.
Well, what would you rather him say? Because we know what he's talking about when he says rights.
Well, we all have like an agreement on like, you know, people shouldn't be allowed to fuck with other people. People shouldn't, you know,
Right.
there has to be a legal system in place. So I'm skating over that. I was just making a joke. It really doesn't bother me that you say rights. I was just cracking a joke because it's a super autistic conversation. And,
well, it's just such a common thing.
And you are super autistic.
yeah, you know, but you know, and so I don't believe the will of the people as far as like what they specifically want is necessarily valid either.
Right.
You know, because we have this current like you know, what would you even call it? There's a word for it. It's blank. I'm blanking on it right now. The separation of powers in government, where we have three branches of government. Is it it's not partisan. What the fuck's the word? Anyway, so we have a government that's got the powers separated, and all that's done, especially ever since we've opened the borders wide open to to all these different races and cultures of people coming in that are all they're all advocating for their own interests. All of a sudden now we've got this congressional gridlock where nothing is getting done. You have Congress completely opposed to the president. You have two sections of Congress completely opposed to each other, and they're only operating on party lines and aren't working together anymore. So, obviously, we need to go, even if it's only temporary. We kind of should have to go. Unpopular opinion alert. We have to go towards a even less democratic direction to fix this problem. I really think we need someone strong arm to step in and just knock it down and get shit done. Start signing papers. We're going to deport illegals. We are going to, bang, 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 bang down the line. Like, I'm not saying Emperor Trump, but Emperor Trump.
Oh yeah, the heads are going to explode. So real quick, I've been on for an hour and 20 minutes. Been my experience that people lose interest after an hour. So I don't know how many viewers you have or listeners you have, if you can even count that.
Google Hangouts has last time I did this was about 6 months ago. That's kind of why I was taken surprise earlier when everything is like different. I don't see the viewer count. I used to be able to see it at the bottom left of my screen. I don't see it now. But we do. I can confirm at least 3 people are watching, but I know it's only 3 people. But those are who I can confirm.
Right. So I would suggest we wrap this up, and if you feel like this is something we can do, we can come back again next Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel, and do all this shit. Pick it up where we left off.
We could
people's attention span kind of wear out.
Okay.
We could either continue this again, or if other people now have grown the stones to come up against me, we can try to do that. Gary.
Oh yeah.
So if we want to,
by the way, that was Gary.
Gary. But we can put a pin on it. Do you want to maybe all 3 of us can maybe just take like 1 or 2, 3 minutes and just go over like what we took away from this conversation, like end it on a good note?
I would like to add one thing. We scratched on it, and I want to talk about it for 1 second, because every time I talk about it, it really rustles Jimmy's and gets everybody upset.
Puts the
we
Jim
talked about Germany.
into orbit.
We talked about Germany and World War II and how they were like economically prosperous. Anyway, so, and you said Hitler was elected. Now, I'm not going to say Hitler was right in everything that he did, especially towards the end there when syphilis kind of rotted his brain and he went a little nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to defend everything he did either.
No. But in the beginning, a lot of people glance over this, and it's a real conversation I would like to have someday, because I've studied the history of the topic. Hitler was a great leader in the beginning, and he was elected to be a great leader, and he actually truly loved his country. He loved Germany.
Because what he did was he honed on what I was just talking about. He got his whole country to rally around something and stand for something and have a soul.
And when he inherited, so to speak, Germany was in shit.
Yeah.
Germany was in bad shape.
It's called Hitler's Economic Miracle. You can Google that when you're done. Yeah.
And if you look, there are certain European countries today using his model of economics. So not everything the dude did was bad. I know it's an unpopular opinion to talk about. Hitler did some good things too. Because as soon as you say that, everybody's like, "Oh my fucking God, all the Jews," and yeah, right. And don't get me wrong. I think 6 million people going to a gas chamber is a terrible fucking thing. I don't even care
6 million.
who they are.
Yeah.
Huh?
No, never mind. I was just saying. I wasn't sure about the 6 million number.
Yeah, I have my doubts that it even went down like that, but that's a whole different discussion.
I've heard anywhere from 4. I've heard up to 9, but 6 seems to be a pretty common general. I'm not looking for an argument on that. You can say it's less, you can say it's more. I don't care.
Yeah.
But anyway, that part of it. I mean, listen, I'm not trying to fucking take anything away from that. That was terrible. Yeah. But I mean. So, you mean to tell me if I cured cancer today, and then I killed a family and raped them all tomorrow, But does that mean does that mean the cure for cancer is just shit now? Fuck that. It's no good. Fuck that. We can't do that because that dude's a rapist killer. I mean,
You got to give the devil his due.
Yeah,
you got exactly. So.
Yeah, take the good with the bad.
But I don't really have much to add. I think this was a pretty decent conversation. I would definitely like to continue it sometime. I just think we're getting long-winded, and I don't think everybody wants to hear it that long.
We'll put
that,
a pin.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, Logan, anything you want to add?
No, I think we could start wrapping it up. I mean, we're just gonna say what we took away from this, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I mean, I think we agree on a lot. I didn't realize where you're coming from before with what are people going to rally around. So I think that is where we should pick up next time, because I think that's definitely a good conversation and one worth exploring on its own. So.
Yeah, I was a little confused by that as well. It is something I would like to continue.
Sure. And I guess
what did you get from this?
So, I mean, we agreed more than what I thought we would walking into, which is good. I will say that again, I come from a background of these kinds of this time 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I was making a lot of these same arguments. And so, for at least in that respect, my mind hasn't changed in the way of I still think individualism and moral objectivism is just like it's an intellectual claptrap. But as far as I am interested in picking up where we left off as far as the national rallying cry, I guess the rallying cry of a people. I am interested in picking that back up because it's, and I'm not saying you guys, because you guys are both relatively in lockstep as far as well, not lockstep, you know what I mean? You guys are in agreement as far as like minarchism and individualism and stuff like that. So, but I'll say that we're talking about things that go beyond just materialism, again, as a group expression, right? That's important for people. And if you're an individualist, you kind of have conditioned yourself away from that. But groups do have an expression and groups do have an interest. And it is non-material. It goes beyond just, I don't know. It's hard to explain. Maybe I'll find a better way to elaborate on it.
You're right. I mean, it's definitely, it goes beyond materialism. And I think it's important. I actually think there has to be an ideology of some kind that people have to rally around and agree with. And right now, it's like it's progressivism and I don't know, egalitarianism and diversity as a strength seems to be the rallying cry, unfortunately. And so I think we're rallying around a lot of bad ideas right now. And I think you're right. We have to get the right ideas to rally around. So that's for next time.
Sure thing.
Excellent. Well, I had a good time. I actually hope some people listened, and I look forward to the next time. This was a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah, me too. And that this video is going to be the same link that we've been sharing around to the group. That link will still take them to this stream. This stream is going to be posted on YouTube. So, so yeah, I will upload the video once it's done processing to the Barge Bloodsports channel. Because this is on my channel right now. And so, yeah, we'll get it uploaded there. And then I'm hoping to just do it from the Barge Bloodsports channel to begin with in the future.
Okay.
Excellent. All right. Peace out. I'll see you guys in Messenger.
Cool. Later.
Thanks, guys.